Hello, I'm Dr. Beth Dawson, and I'm a body language expert, and I have been doing body language analysis for over 20 years. Okay, so what we have here is in the second video. So we have Vladimir Putin in his very typical stance. So he often sits like this, the legs, wide, very, very sort of solid, looking forward, the arms, in front, territorial dominance pose, if you like. As I said, it's definitely one of his baseline poses, so there's nothing sort of unusual about this. Again, he is very well known for being often very still, doesn't give away a lot with any sort of, what we call in body language leakage. But we can still discern some very sort of small micro gestures in this video as well. We see some fidgeting. We see some, and what we do see in this video is he was tapping his foot, and we see the brow furrowing. So the furrowing brow can often be linked to what we call in body language cognitive load. So if somebody's thinking, there's a lot of things they have to think about, there's some questions coming up. But when we see that with some sort of signs of what we call fidgeting, this is a definite sign of irritation. So he's a little bit irritated at this point. He's sat there, he's irritated. It's he's trying to contain it, obviously, because he knows, as I said, the world's press is watching him. But it's requiring some effort. You can see that the furrowed brow, the foot, the fidgeting, etc. Donald Trump, he is also in a very, very, typical pose for him, very typical posture. He's sat there. He's got his hands in what we call the steeple position, which is often, this is taught in media training to politicians. It's kind of like a bit like a power pose. He's doing that. He's got his hands like this, but he often does that. But there's a little bit of fidgeting as well from Donald Trump. He's fidgeting. He's a little bit, okay, let's wrap this up. Let's do this, etc. So what we see, there's some difference in the way they're seated, which is actually very interesting. We see that Vladimir Putin's posture is very much about sort of like this quiet control, not too much movement. He doesn't want to give too much away. Think of like a chess player, for example. And then Donald Trump's posture very much about sort of commanding attention. It's a little bit more about sort of the dominance as well, but it's also a little bit more about the showman that we know Donald Trump often can take on that. He can take on that energy as well of the showman on stage. But they're both sat there. They're both looking, they're fidgeting. We've got some micro gestures of fidget. They're looking a little bit irritated. So we can definitely discern that. There's a very interesting part to this video, actually, and that is when we see Vladimir Putin puts his hands, he cups his hands to his mouth, calling out. So whenever we see this, I mean, we all know this, if we're doing this, we're calling a friend or we're calling somebody, this is what we're doing to try and amplify our voice. We all know this gesture. But what we're seeing here with Vladimir Putin, what's really interesting, and a couple of the things that I noted, were that we also have some micro signs of bemusement. So how do we see bemusement? We can see that with like an asymmetric mouth pull at the same time. We see that one eyebrow is going up. These are all very small micro gestures, but we can see them. When we slow the video down, we can really see them. We have sort of like a very slight head tilt. And, he's doing this. This is a very interesting gesture because it's almost kind of a theatrical gesture in this case. He isn't really trying to amplify his voice so that somebody at the back can hear him. Oh, sorry, you can't hear me. I'm going to make my voice a bit louder. He's doing it in a theatrical way. It's a little bit like, okay, I'm going to say this again because obviously you haven't understood, etc., etc. It's that kind of gesture. It's that kind of communication. Very interesting. It's almost like he's saying, your question is ridiculous, or you haven't understood anything, or you know, I'll have to repeat myself because obviously you just haven't, you know, followed this. I mean, we know that the two men are obviously extremely familiar with the press. And again, they know that the world's, you know, the world is watching them. But this is a very, very interesting gesture to observe in this video.